We've all been going forward in the Charlie Kirk investigation. Candace Owens has been leading the charge. I've been doing daily recaps on her show, just kind of reviewing the information and distilling it down, boiling it down to something a little bit more comprehensive, and maybe if you want to go through the information a little quicker, or you just want to get a different perspective of it. I like to go through the points that she talks about, how people respond, and then give you my thoughts. So let's get right into it. Last night she had a great show, and she started by talking about Frank Turek, who, I guess he said this several weeks back. He was talking about how he wanted to see her held accountable, I guess, in biblical terms. And he's referring back to the Old Testament when he says this. Let's take a listen.
Candace Owens, yeah, it's ridiculous. You don't accuse people of murder without evidence, but that's what she's doing left and right. She's insinuating it left and right. That's evil. In fact, in the Old Testament, Exodus 22:22 says that if you abused a widow or the fatherless, God says, I will hunt you down and kill you with the sword.
That's harsh. I guess Frank Turek isn't a believer in the New Testament, which says turn the other cheek. The Old Testament was supposed to be the old way, and then the New Testament was Jesus bringing the message of forgiveness. But I'm not a particularly religious person myself, but I do know that. And I guess he's not a believer in that, but he should be careful with his words, because there's a lot of people that do believe only in the Old Testament, and they might want to take some kind of action or maybe think that he's right. So I think that's a good point to try to, it's a good point that Candace calls him out on this, because it's irresponsible, it's reckless. He shouldn't be doing it. Next, she talks about the gloves that we've talked about a few times, and she has too, and she might have figured out what's going on with those gloves. Let's take a listen.
He sent me this email and we decided to fact check it. He said, hey guys, just an FYI, I do woodworking as a hobby and I use CA glue and spray activator. And I'm not sure where I learned it, but I always remember being told to use black nitro gloves because it's the most resistant to that crazy adhesive.
So it's resistant to adhesive. And that could explain why, because he says that the microphone, when it was shattered, it has plastic that has sticky adhesive on it. And if you're dealing with that, you're trying to get that plastic off of something or off of a person, you might use those gloves in that case. So it's a possibility. It's something to think about, and we should keep an open mind, try to figure out what happened and what things mean in this investigation until we can either know what it is or rule it out as something important. Next, she talks about there was a suspicious man on UVU the day before September 10th that UVU's security team had found, and he was casing the joint. I guess he was looking around and he was trying to just looking very suspicious, and they came and confronted him with it. Let's listen to what she says.
Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Didn't expect to hear his name in the story. Apparently, there was someone on September 9th who looked remarkably suspicious, who was moving about on campus, stood out. The security went, this person's behaving oddly. What are they doing? It looks like they're kind of scoping the place out, if you know what I mean. And so they said, we're going to go up to this individual. And when that suspicious individual was approached, he told the campus security that he was Senator Mike Lee's bodyguard, scoping out the area to ensure that the senator was going to be safe ahead of the event. So they said, okay, that makes sense. We'll let you go. The only thing is that wasn't true. Like I said, by that time, the senator's office had already canceled their plans. And I've done some digging, and it also appears that Mike Lee is pretty down to earth. He doesn't actually have a security apparatus, a security team.
So that's interesting. So the person said that they were a bodyguard of Mike Lee, who had been scheduled to go to the event on 9/10, but he had canceled. And so he said he was a bodyguard of Senator Mike Lee, and that turned out to be false. And it turns out that Mike Lee doesn't even use that type of security. So very interesting that happened, and I'll be keeping an eye on this to see if anything more develops on this situation. Next, she talks about Blake's failure to remember where he was on certain days. And also she talks about his reaction to Candace on X. And his reactions are always very strong, and they're kind of like over the top. I'm not sure why, but let's listen to this.
We solve Officer Bagley's bout of pregnancy brain, and Blake Neff comes at us like this on X. He wrote, in today's episode, Candace starts harassing another random Utah police officer, accuses him of being a dirty cop, suggests that is suspiciously timed that he moved to Utah a year before Charlie's shooting, and then asks people who knew him in the Marines years ago to send her dirt on him.
That's not true. She did not ask that. I review her shows every day, and she was simply asking for information. That's all. In fact, those people can be cleared. Their names can actually be cleared if we can get some more information on them, and then we can just write them off the list. That's how easy it is. If we could just get people to answer simple questions, we can just take them off the list as something important, and we can move on to other things. But since we can't get any clarity as to where Erica was or Tyler Boyer on September 9th, they won't let us, they gave an alibi, but it was wrong. And they give it for the wrong day. So it's just this simple. If they would just give us the alibi or information on certain people, then we can cross them off the list and move on, and no one will ever hear another word about them. That's how easy it is. So he went on to suggest that she get raided by law enforcement. Let's take a listen.
Among other questions that they asked me specifically, and I'm serious, I'm quoting them directly. They wrote, what steps are you taking if the worst happens and you are raided by law enforcement? Raided by law enforcement? Why would it? I didn't kill Charlie Kirk. Why would I be raided by law enforcement? Raid us for helping? Consistent messaging to the public was they wanted nothing but transparency. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Erica Kirk, Turning Point USA. We didn't edit the videos. We don't lie about what was on the footage. Power to the people. Here's the footage. In fact, the influencers are lying. Why don't you raid them?
Okay, and so she goes on to talk about the rooftop, and there was a mystery. Let's let her talk about it.
Officer Bagley, who I have to say, were I seated amongst a jury of my peers, I would label him to be unconvincing in his presentation.
Not just unconvincing, but this guy is a complete, to me, comes off as an unprepared buffoon. I can't believe some of the answers that he's given where he just doesn't seem to care about anything. It's truly amazing.
I am not believing the rooftop screwdriver story. Something feels wrong there. The reason for that, first and foremost, I want to say they want us to forget the origins of the screwdriver story, right? When we first learned about the screwdriver, it was less than 24 hours after Charlie was assassinated. We learned about the screwdriver because someone in law enforcement leaked information to the...
That's right. CNN actually released the first information. It was leaked to CNN, and they talked about how the screwdriver was found near the rifle, was not found anywhere on any rooftop. That didn't even come up until the hearing that we just had. This is something new, and it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up.
The press, except when they initially leaked the information, they said that it was found with the rifle, near the rifle, not on Losey Center rooftop. Okay, they said the screwdriver was found near the rifle, and I can show you that. Here's a throwback headline from September 11th. Here is CNN, and it reads, authorities recovered a screwdriver near the rifle investigators believe was used in yesterday's fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. According to a source with knowledge of the investigation, investigators believe this to be an indication that the shooter may have used it to disassemble and reassemble the firearm before using it.
That's why they needed the screwdriver in the story. That's why it was so important, because there was footage of Tyler Robinson, and clearly, there was footage of somebody, let's just say, and clearly they were not carrying anything. So they had to come up with, they stuck it down his pants, he disassembled it, all these different things that to try to cram this, make this story fit, and it's not fitting. The screwdriver is important for that reason. They wanted to say he assembled it and disassembled it, and I think they said that he did it more than once. It's totally unbelievable, and I don't believe it. That's my opinion. I don't believe it. I don't. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that Tyler Robinson disassembled that rifle, or do you think that he stuck it down his pants? I'd be surprised, but let me know what you think. So Bagley has had several moments during this whole thing, and one of the biggest things to me is that he submitted a written report 10 months ago, right after the event. And if you compare that report to what he says now and what he said in the hearing, there are major, major differences. And I have a big problem with that. So one of the things that he said was regarding the rooftop footage, and the defense attorney asked if Bagley had reviewed any of the footage after Charlie was taken down, but before Bagley was able to get up on the roof. She wants to know, did you review any of that footage? Let's listen.
Was anybody on the rooftop before you? After Charlie goes down, was anybody on that rooftop before you? And hey, this is 10 months later, so I'm assuming obviously you work at the police department, you work at UVU, you have access to the videos, right? Wouldn't that be just like a normal part of your investigation to see exactly what happened? Once you determined that this person jumped off the rooftop, wouldn't you have watched every single second leading to the moment that you secured, afterward, leading up to the moment that you secured the rooftop? Alfred Bagley says he didn't do that. He doesn't know.
He doesn't know. And he just doesn't seem to care. Nobody in this whole thing seems to care. It doesn't seem like they did their homework at all. They weren't prepared. Bagley wasn't prepared. You can't tell me that somebody sat down with him and asked him questions. I can't believe that the answers that he gave were rehearsed and practiced. And that to me doesn't sound right. It almost sounds like this whole thing is like an afterthought for them. It's like the date of the trial snuck up on them and they were just like, oh my gosh, the trial is tomorrow. We got to, let me review a bunch of things real quick, and maybe not even that. It just seems like he got up on the stand and he was just not caring about anything. It's like, did you look at the video from the rooftop? If I were him, I would have been going over every video I could get my hands on, every single one of them. He didn't have a care in the world. It's like he just left and went home that day after the event and then just forgot about it. That's what it seems like. So that's what she's pointing out there. Also, there was an update on Alan Robertson, which is good. Let's listen.
I also want to add here as an important update, because we were asking a lot of questions specifically about Alan Robinson, who formerly was of the San Bernardino Police. He had served years there. He left willfully because he wanted to raise his kids somewhere outside of the city. And he obviously, San Bernardino is like a whole different scene, and he left apparently on very good terms. So I want to provide that update because that's why we were asking for information. So they were not sure entirely why he had an entry with no details on the Brady list. And I also want to say that we've covered a lot of people on the show, and we get a ton of emails being like, this person is shady, or you should look into this. This was the first time that we got a lot of emails of people who were saying that Alan was actually a good guy. And we got an answer, by the way, of why he was on that campus, which I should have kind of thought through, because this is kind of common sense. He's a USU officer. And don't forget that unusually, Charlie had an event 10 days later back in Utah that was supposed to take place at USU. So they were not there in coordination with Charlie's team or in coordination with UVU. They were there because they were doing a threat assessment for their event that was 10 days later.
Okay, and that makes sense. That makes complete sense. And now we can rule him out, write him off the list. He's fine. Nothing to see here. Let's just move on. And that's a good thing. That's why she asked the question. That's what happened. Okay, and now Blake was having problems with his memory. He couldn't remember where he was on the night of September 10th and the days leading up to that. And he just was having trouble. Didn't know what hotel he was in. He didn't know what city he was in. And it seems like now we have an answer.
We were helping Blake, who blanked out, remember the hotel that he stayed in the night of September 10th. He at first thought he had stayed in Orem, then said he maybe misspoke. Then he remembered that actually, no, he stayed in Salt Lake City. No one saw, he doesn't remember what he did when he was in Salt Lake City. He didn't even remember that he was with Danny Phillip or where him and Danny Phillip went. We were able to determine that some members, at least, of the Turning Point USA team stayed at the Asher Adams Autograph Collection Hotel in Salt Lake City. Here's the Asher Adams Hotel. There it is. Bang. Look at that. Blakey, ask and you shall receive. Now, Blakey, now with that jogging your memory, do you remember that you were do you remember whether or not you were stayed at the same hotel as Andrew?
Good questions. Very good questions. So I wonder if that'll jog his memory at all. Blake has been coming back with some real weird responses, and I'm not going to play him here because they're just too strange. He seems so childish to me and so immature. I can't even believe that he's in a position of authority at that organization. But Candace talks about the school bombing that happened in Iran and how the U.S. tried to deny it at first, and then it turned out that it was the Tomahawk missiles that were used, which are exclusively used by the U.S. And let's take a listen to that.
The United States, at the instruction, presumably of Israel, bombed an elementary school in Iran. A primary school is an elementary school in Iran. 156 people were murdered, including 120 students and 26 teachers. And the craziest part of the story is that the United States tried to deny it. Take a listen to just this little brief.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hickson? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
A day after these remarks, an Iranian state-linked news agency released footage showing a strike on buildings nearby. Filmed in the afternoon on the day the school was struck.
So you get the idea. But this is a documentary that was put together by Sky News, and it's worth watching. I would recommend watching the whole thing and just trying to decide for yourself what's going on with the government and what they're doing. It seems that they did have knowledge of this, and it's becoming more and more disappointing every day that we don't get what we were promised. I'm not sure why. I don't think anybody could have saw this coming. I think we made the best decision that we could at the time with what was in front of us by choosing Donald Trump, but it seems like we're not getting anything that we were promised. This is the big problem. I don't like to talk negatively about the United States of America or the government too much, but I do like to ask questions, and I think we should. I think we should do it while free speech is still free and legal, and I think we should all say what's on our minds. I do recommend watching this video, this documentary, and just it might be eye-opening for some people. I just wish that we could get what we were promised. I've said this many times in other videos, and I know it's not about what I want, but I think a lot of people are feeling this way. If we could just get what we were promised, even at this point, I think lots of things we could work through a lot of the problems that have happened already if we could just get back on track. If we could just get on track and do what was promised during the campaign, that would go a long way. That was it for Candace and her show last night. It was a good one and lots of good information coming out of there. We're all trying to do our part in this, and I'm just trying to boil this down and make it a little easier for people that want to review what she talked about. And let me know your comments, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's a small channel, and I'm just trying to build it now, but I do want to hear what you had to say. So leave your comments below. I appreciate you watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.